We're going to get started with this Outlook tips and tricks with something that I mentioned in my other classes also, which is called the Quick Access Toolbar. And I've mentioned it in a lot of the other classes because it also does apply to Excel and Word and PowerPoint, etc. And I just think it's a helpful tool, so I like to mention it. Now, the Quick Access Toolbar is found at the top left, and it's meant to do exactly what it sounds like, which is hold the things that you need to quickly access. So if I click on the if I click on the button here on the right, I get a few options that I can add to the Quick Access Toolbar. So if I click on this drop down and choose Print, for example, that will add a button for print. If I click on the drop down and choose Forward, it adds the Forward button. And the way I like to think of the Quick Access Toolbar is that often most of the commands that you need are on the Home tab, so everything you need is usually on this first tab. But every once in a while there might be something on one of the other tabs that is something that you also like to use or need once in a while. But instead of going to that tab and trying to remember where it is, what I like to do is add it to the Quick Access Toolbar. That way I can stay on my Home tab, and any of the buttons that are on other tabs I just put up on this toolbar. Obviously, when you look at this list, though, there's just a few options from the drop down, so I wanted to show one other way that you can add to the Quick Access Toolbar. So for example, let's say that I use the Mark All as Red button on a regular basis. I would just come into where I see the button, do a right click, and the first option is Add to Quick Access Toolbar, and now it's added it up to the toolbar. If there's something else, like maybe under View, I use the Close All Items button quite often. I'm going to right click on top of that and choose Add to Quick Access Toolbar. If you get a few things on your toolbar and then later realize that there are certain things you don't use very often, it's very easy to remove them. You just go up to the toolbar, right click over any button that you want to get rid of, and the first option becomes Remove from Quick Access Toolbar. So a right click will remove those buttons that you added. When it comes to working in Outlook, there's various ways that you can customize the view to better work for you. Everybody has their own preferences and what works best for them, so I just wanted to mention a few things. Now, when you first come into Outlook, it's usually defaulted to grouping by date. So you can see here that it's got yesterday and older, and these are groups that I can expand and collapse depending on how many emails you have in there. You might have one for yesterday, one for this month. And I just find that those lines for the groups, to me, take up a little bit too much space, and I'd rather have more room for my email. So I did want to show you how to turn those off. And a lot of the things I'm going to be doing next have to do with changing your view, so we will be spending a lot of time on the View tab. So to get rid of groups like this, again, we're on the View tab here, and you'll see different ways that you can group in this box here. I'm actually going to click the button at the bottom right to give me more options. And then I'm going to untick where it says Show in Groups, and that ungroups it for me. And now I don't have those blank lines or the expand and collapse. So if you want to get rid of that group, again, that was the View tab, drop down, and untick where it says Show in Groups. If that doesn't work for some reason, if you're still seeing what look to be groups here, every once in a while there are certain ones that it's still going to group, but it's still going to show that. So for example, if I click on this Categories, that grouped by categories, which I don't have any assigned, so they all fall under None. And that Show in Groups is still deselected, so I just wanted to let you know another way to kind of get rid of that. If the Show in Groups isn't working, just come back in here and choose Date. So if you click on Date and make sure that the Show in Groups is unticked, it should get back to no groups on the folder that you're looking at. Something else that I like to do to try and provide a little bit more space for my emails here is turn off the message preview. So usually most people have their Outlook set up to have what's called the reading pane, and the reading pane is something that is also under the View. Under the View tab over off here to the right, you have a drop down for reading pane, and you can choose either right or bottom, or you can turn it off if you prefer. I like to have mine on the bottom. That's just the way I like to do things, but whatever works best for you is fine. But since I do have an easy way to preview my email right here, I don't feel like I need the preview that shows up that gives 1 or 2 lines of the actual email up here in the top. So to turn that off, and again, kind of compact that top area, also on the View tab, I go to message preview, and here I can turn it to off. Now it's going to ask me, do you want to do it for this folder or everything? I'm just going to go ahead and say this folder. And you'll notice that this shrinks up quite a bit. So I can see more of my emails here without having to scroll. And that's just something I find a little bit more useful. Again, up to you. If you like grouping or you want 1 or 2 or 3 lines of message preview, it's all up to you and what works best for you. You can also change these columns up at the top. So if you look at the columns that come standard with Outlook and realize, you know, there's certain ones I don't use, maybe this mention isn't important to you, or maybe you never use categories, you can change the order of these. You can change how wide and how narrow they are if you need more space. And I wanted to walk through a bit of those column headings. So I just click and drag between any 2 column headings to make it wider or narrower. If I want to get rid of one, let's say that I don't use this mention, I would click on it, hold, and drag up, and you'll notice I get a black X. Once I do that, I let go, and it removes that column. And that just gives a little bit more space for the other things that you might find more important. If you ever want to get that back, or if you want to add a different column, to do that, I go right up to the column headings again, and this time I'm going to right-click. And when I right-click, I choose Field Chooser. And then I get this little pop-up box where I can choose from these different options. And to add them, I simply click on it. So I'm going to choose Mention again and just put it back. Drag up and drop, and it drops in that column. And again, I could click and drag it to make it larger if I wanted to. There's lots of different options in here. Some of them are what they call frequently used fields. So if I scroll through, I could choose from that. There's also a lot of other ones that are not in this list. So I just change this drop down to, let's say, address fields or date time or all mail or all post. There's a lot of different ones that you could add if you'd like to. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and close that. And I got into it by a right click on top of the headers area and Field Chooser. Once you've got the view the way you want, so maybe you've added some columns, you've rearranged them, you've decided whether you want the message preview, your grouping, all that kind of thing. If you like the way that this folder's looking, which is my inbox right now, and you have other folders that aren't quite the same, so for example, off here to the left, I'm going to click on the miscellaneous folder, and it's still doing the grouping and the message preview, and it's got the old columns, that type of thing. If I like what I've done with my inbox, I can basically say that I want other folders to look like this. And to do that, again, on your View tab, we're going to go all the way to the left to where it says Change View, hit the drop down, and what we're going to do is say Apply Current View to Other Mail Folders. And usually it'll come in here and the inbox will be shrunk up like this. So if you want to see the subfolders under your inbox, just click this little down arrow. And then you can see all the different folders, and you can decide if you just want a couple of them to have a new view, or if you want everything under your inbox to have a new view, you would select inbox and then come down to the bottom and say apply view to subfolders. But I'm going to say OK. And now if I go back to that same folder, notice it doesn't have the grouping and it doesn't have the preview. It's gone to match the inbox. So again, that was in the View tab, Change View, Apply Current View to Other Mail Folders. Something else to help make your environment work better for you. If you've been working in Outlook for quite a while, you probably have a lot of folders under your inbox, and sometimes it can get a little cluttered in there and it's hard to remember where certain things are. If you're working on a project or something that you go to really frequently, you can add that to your favorites. Kind of think of it like your favorites in your Internet Explorer, whatever your web browser is. It's something that you want to go back to quickly and easily. So to do that, I'm just going to say, let's say this top priority folder here on the left is something that I come into quite often. I'm going to click and drag it up to this favorites area and let go. And now it's basically just a shortcut to get to the same folder. Let's put up that miscellaneous too, since it has some things in there. So if I click on miscellaneous, it takes me to the miscellaneous folder, just like it would down here. It's just a little bit easier to find because I'll put just my favorite things at the top instead of scrolling through however many subfolders I have. Later on, if you decide that there's certain folders showing up in your favorites that you don't use anymore, maybe you had a project and it's ended, or you just don't need to get to that folder as often, it's very important when you go to remove from the favorites that you choose the right option. So for example, if I wanted to get rid of this, I would right click on top of the folder I want to get rid of, And the first one that you might see up top here is delete folder, but you do not want that. If you delete the folder, it will actually delete it from down here also and delete any emails that are in it. So you don't want that one. You want to keep going down until you see remove from favorites. So by clicking remove from favorites, the top priority email stays, it just isn't my favorites anymore. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing for this miscellaneous. Off to the right then, you'll find the to-do pane. And there's different ways you can customize the to-do pane, or to-do bar as it's also called. So you can turn it on and off if you realize that you don't use this calendar or this list of tasks. Under the View tab, you would find the to-do bar over here, and you could say, I don't want it on, or you could say, I just want the calendar, I want the tasks, people if you use the contacts or people on a frequent basis. You can customize that to show what you'd like. You can also decide how much room is between the two. So right now it's showing one meeting up here, but I'm kind of cut off from the second one. By hovering between, I can just click and drag. And that works for pretty much everything in here. If I wanted to make this wider, I could. If I want the space between my list of emails and my reading pane larger or smaller, I could do that. Same thing here. I need to show my folders a bit more or show them a little bit less. Just click and drag in between the areas where you see the thin gray line. Now I'll show you some easy shortcuts for how to create an email message or appointment when you're not actually in Outlook necessarily. So let's say that I was in a Word document and I was working away or I was on the web or doing something else and I realized, oh, I need to email somebody or I really need to set up an appointment right now. Rather than coming back into Outlook and going to Home and New Items and doing whatever I need to do, if you're someplace else, you can come down and hover over your Outlook on the taskbar here. And if you hover over that and do a right click, and you'll see the options for new email message, new appointment, new meeting, etc. And it just saves a couple clicks where you can just go ahead and open up your new email message, even though you might not actually be looking at Outlook right at the moment. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my inbox. There are times when I get an email from somebody that I want to do something with it. Maybe I want to turn it into a task or turn it into a meeting or an appointment. There are a few different ways that you can go about doing this. So let's say that this email that I received, I want to make a task out of it. Down here on the bottom left, you'll see some buttons for switching between your calendar, your inbox, your task. I need to expand this a little bit so now I can see the contacts and the task button. If I click on my email up here and drag it down and drop it on top of tasks, it'll open up a new task and it copies in the subject line of the email and then also copies in whatever text was in the email down below. Now I could set a reminder or a start date or change anything I need to or add some extra text, but it just copies things in for you to save you a bit of time. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this out without saving it. I don't actually need that as a task at the moment, so I'm just going to close that. I did want to mention that it actually works if you drag it over here to the left and if you drag it to the right to the task area on the taskbar, but I don't recommend putting it on the right, and I'll show you why. So let's say that I were to drag this off to the right. I'm going to let it go over here, and you notice it didn't pop up a new task the way that it did when I dragged it to the left. And that's because it basically is just kind of flagging this email, so it turns the email into a flagged item that needs to be completed. And one of the issues with this is later on if you decide that you're done with this task, so let's say you're over here in the task area, often when you're done with the task you would right click and choose Mark Complete or Mark Complete up here on the toolbar. But it's also really common to come in here, click on the task and say, oh, I'm done with that, and just hit the delete button. But when I hit delete, it actually pops up and says, deleting this message will also delete, or deleting this item will also delete the email message. Do you want to continue? And it's trying to tell me that it's not only going to delete the task, it's going to get rid of the email in my inbox. And unfortunately, if you at some point saw this and weren't really sure, I thought, don't bother me with this and hit tick. If you tick the don't show this message again, this actually won't pop up. It'll just delete both. If you do say OK, notice that it gets rid of it from the inbox as well as from down below. I'm going to go back to the deleted items and just grab that and bring it back to my inbox. So you notice that when I dragged it back in from the deleted items, if you're paying attention, it actually adds it back over here to the right. And that's because it's still a flagged email, so it's still considered something that needs to be completed. I'm actually going to get rid of that flag by right-clicking on it and saying clear flag, and that'll drop it off this list. Now let's go ahead and drag it down to the left. This is the original way I showed you create a task from an email. Let's go ahead and save and close this. Let's assume that I actually do want it to be a task. You'll notice that it shows up over here to the right. But what's nice about doing this with the left drag is that if I get done with the task and decide I don't need this anymore, I'm going to go ahead and delete that on the right, but the email stays on the left. So long story short, you can drag to the right. I just don't recommend it. It's a little bit too easy to accidentally delete an email out of your inbox. But if you drag it to the left, you don't have to worry about that problem. Something else you can do with your email is drag it to the left and drop it on top of the calendar button. So maybe I want to make an appointment to remind myself to do something with this. Again, it copies in the subject and the text. I could add more if I wanted to. I could pick a new date and time. It just is going to pick kind of the current date and the current time. So I could choose a different day and then save that, and it would add it to my calendar. And it just saves you from copy and paste. I could also invite people and change this to a meeting and use that to create a meeting request also. There is another way to create a meeting request from an email, and that's actually a button up at the top. So let's grab an email here that has more than one person in the to line. Okay, so there's a couple people that I've got CC and then the test account that we've got here. If I get this email and I realize, oh, I need to meet with the people on this email about this topic, instead of creating a meeting request and copy and pasting all this information in, I could come up here to where your reply and forward buttons are, click on this button that says meeting, which is actually reply with meeting, and it copies the information from the email into a meeting request, including the people who are included in the email. At this point, I could make any changes I want. I could set the date and time, enter in more text if I need to. I could add more attendees. I could delete somebody off that doesn't actually need to be there. So I can make whatever changes I want before I send it. But again, it just saves you time from copying and pasting if I select it and then choose for reply with meeting. Let's talk about a few more things related to calendars and meetings and things like that. So there are times when you'll need to have a meeting with someone that isn't in our organization, meaning that you can't see their availability. And so what you'll end up doing quite often is typing out an email of, I'm free on Monday and Tuesday from this time to this time, or here's when my appointments are. Rather than having to type that all up in an email and send it out, you can actually send them a picture of your calendar. So to do that, I'm going to go to a new email message and go to Insert, Calendar. There's a lot of options in here. I'm just going to go ahead and change this and say, show the next 7 days of my availability. And I'm going to leave everything else the same. You could change things to show if you actually want to show some full details or limited details about your appointments, but I'm just going to let it show free or busy. Click OK, and it puts a picture of your calendar in. So that way the person can look and see, okay, on this day they're free from this time, basically all day. On this day they're busy at this time. At this day they're busy at this time. And they can let me know what works for them based on what I have for my availability. It just saves you from typing out what you've got going on. Just keep in mind that if I were to address this to someone and send it, it is a picture of your calendar. So if I was to send this and then the next day I accept a new meeting on one of these dates, that email that I sent won't include the new meeting. It doesn't automatically update. It'll just be a picture of the moment in time when I took a picture of it. But it still saves quite a bit of time from just trying to type out, here's when I'm free, here's when I'm busy. And again, that was on the inside your new email message, Insert Calendar. There are times when you might find yourself creating a meeting and adding somebody to it simply because you kind of want to see their availability. You have a vague memory that somebody's on vacation but you couldn't remember, or you were going to swing by a coworker's queue but you couldn't remember if they're out on afternoons or whatever, and so you just kind of want a quick glimpse of their calendar even though you're not actually creating a meeting. Rather than creating a fake meeting, you can use something called calendar groups to take care of that. So I'm going to switch into my calendar view by clicking on the calendar button down here on the bottom left. And to create a calendar group, up near the middle, I've got this drop down for calendar group. I'm going to choose Create New Calendar Group. I'm just going to name this team. And then you want to insert the names of the people that you want to have in your calendar groups. So I'm just going to pick a couple here. And once I see the name at the top, if it's highlighted blue, I can either double click on it there in the list or hit enter. And you'll notice the name shows up here down below. Once I've got the names of the people I want to see down here, I just click OK. And it's going to open up the calendars next to mine. So you'll see over here on the left, there's the group, which I can expand and collapse. And I can turn them off if I just want to see my own calendar. Or if a week from now, a month from now, I want to check somebody's availability that's in my list, I can just tick and see their calendar also. And you can change it to, the daily view, the weekly view, whatever it is you need to see, just a quick glance at somebody's calendar. Down the road, if you decide that you want more calendar groups, you can definitely have more than one. You would go back up to calendar groups and create a new one. If you have a group that you don't use very often, or there's a certain person that you don't really check their availability that often anymore, you could remove it from the team by right-clicking on the person and choosing Delete Calendar. If you wanted to get rid of the entire calendar group, you would right-click on the team and choose Delete Group. If you wanted to add a new person, so you decided there was a new hire on your team that you wanted to add so you could easily check their availability, you would right-click, choose Add Calendar from Address Book, and then you could choose that person and add them to the list. Just keep in mind, if you right-click on top of a person, you won't get that option, so make sure you're right-clicking on top of the group name, and then you'll get the Add Calendar option. And that's calendar groups. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to my inbox now and talk about one of the features I use most often with emails, which is screenshots. So to take a look at this, I'm going to go ahead and click on a new email message. And screenshots is something that you insert into your email, so it's under the Insert tab. But you'll notice a lot of these options are grayed out. That's because my cursor is currently up here in the to line, so you can't really put things like pictures in the to line. So I need to click down here to where I normally type, and then all my buttons will become available. So I could come to Screenshot drop down, and it's going to show everything that I happen to have open on my computer. So if I wanted the entire screen of something, I could choose from this list. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, for example, and that would drop in everything that's showing in Microsoft Word on the other screen. But usually I don't want the entire thing, I just want part of it. So I'm going to hit Delete to get rid of that. To get just part of the screen, I would go to Insert, Screenshot, and then down at the bottom you've got Screen Clipping. So if I click on Screen Clipping, the message then kind of disappears out of the way, and then whatever was directly behind that message grays out a bit, and I get this plus sign. Now if I click and drag, once I let go, whatever I had selected with my click and drag is my screen clipping. Something to keep in mind on this, right now my email message is directly in front of Outlook, but if I happen to switch over to something like my Word document, so maybe I have my Word document and that's what I really want to grab screen clipping of, I need to look at that and then go into my message so that basically whatever I want was the last thing I was looking at. That way when I go to Insert, Screenshot, Screen Clipping, and the message disappears out of the way, because Word was directly behind it, that's what I'm able to click and drag to highlight now. This is something I use really often if I just need to send somebody a picture of something. So for example, like I get an error message on my computer and I want to let the help desk know what the error message said. It can be really nice and handy to have. And if you ever used print screen, this is basically print screen but upgraded. It is something I use frequently enough that I do actually have it up on my quick access toolbar, of course. So remember to add things to the quick access toolbar, I would find it here on the ribbon. So I'd go to Insert, Screenshot, and because I use the screen clipping, I'm actually going to click in here, come down to screen clipping, and right click on top of screen clipping. It doesn't always work this way with drop downs, but in this example, I can choose screen clipping, and that way I get just that option and not the drop down. And that way I could use this whenever I need to. So that's something you might want to add inside a new email message. At this point, I'd actually need to send this or keep it, so I'm going to close the email message and say no for changes. Switch back over to Outlook here. But the fact that I added that screen clipping button to my quick access toolbar is still there, even though I didn't send or even though I didn't send or save the message. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is search. So quite often when you have a lot of emails, you're looking for something, and there's a few different ways, a few different tips and tricks that I wanted to share with you when it comes to search. When you're searching for emails or tasks or appointments or whatever, you come up to the search box here in the top right. Once you click inside it, it's going to give you some search tools on the top, and often this might be all you need. Maybe you want to just search for things that have attachments, or maybe you want to search for things that are marked important. I don't have one that is both, so if I turn off the has attachments, I do have one that's important. So you've got a lot of options here, and whatever you click up here on the top will kind of go into your search bar. If you want to clear out your search bar, you can click the X on the right. If you want to just look for some text, so let's say I'm going to look for the word important. So I have a lot of emails apparently that have important somewhere in them, and then I can see that down below. And by the way, this is one place where that knowing how to add a column can come in really handy, because often when I'm searching, I'd like to know where is this email sitting. I can't seem to find what folder it's in. So if I want to know where I saved one of these emails, it'd be handy to know what folder it's saved in. So remembering earlier, I could right click on top of the header, choose Field Chooser, and then I'm going to change this inside my field chooser. I'm going to change the frequently used fields to all mail fields. And then in all mail fields, if I scroll down, I find in folder. I can drag that up here. And now I can see, oh, this is in the miscellaneous, this is in my tasks, this is in my send items. It just helps you find those types of things. The quirky thing about this, though, is that search is kind of its own little world. So once I clear this out, that in folder is going to disappear. So it won't remember it for next time I go to search. Once I use the search box, it's gone. Something else to be aware of is that right now I'm searching in my inbox, and so it's searching my Outlook. It's pulling back tasks. If it had an appointment, it would pull that type of thing. But if I switch to one of the other folders, when I go to search in a folder, notice off to the right, it's only going to search in that folder. So if I try to search for important here, I'm only getting the one in this folder. And if you just happen to be in this folder but you were trying to search everywhere, make sure you change this drop down to the right to search either current mailbox or all Outlook items, whatever it is you're trying to do. And all Outlook items will pull back the appointments for you. So if you don't like the fact that you forget about changing this sometimes, you can change the default so that just because you're in a folder that isn't the inbox, it doesn't do current folder, it'll actually search for everything. To change the default, you go to the File tab, down to Options on the left, and then in the Outlook Options pop-up, you come down to Search, and then here's where you can say, you know what, I always wanted to search the current mailbox, not just the current folder. So you have some options there of what is the default going to be. I'm going to leave it the way it is right now just for class. Okay, going back to the inbox, if you find that you search quite often for the same thing, maybe you're constantly searching for emails from a certain person or with certain text or a project title, if you find that you do that on a somewhat regular basis, you might as well save it as a search folder. It just saves you a little bit of time. So let's say that I often search for things that have the word important and are from Jill. What I'm going to do is come over here to the left where I see search folders at the bottom of my list of folders, right click on top of search folders, choose new search folder, and then you can go with some of the pre-installed options, or I'm just going to click and drag down here and choose create a custom search folder. I then click choose, give it a name, so I'm going to call this Jill important, since that's what I'm going to be looking for. You need to select the criteria of what does your search want to find. So again, I want to search for the words important, and I'm going to choose from and choose who I want the emails to be coming from. And there's a lot of other choices in here, but I'm just going to stick with those two. I'm going to say OK, OK, and OK again. And now notice I now have a Jill Important folder. And the nice thing about that is that next time I need to do this, I don't have to come up here and type in Jill's name and type in important and do all that type of thing. This folder will stay down here. If I come down and click on it a week from now, it's going to run the search again. So if I had 5 new emails, it would grab those 5 new ones. Just basically whenever I click this search folder, it's basically going to run a new search with those criteria. And this also is a handy way to keep that in folder column. So earlier when I said if you add that in folder column when you're doing your searches, it kind of removes itself after the search is done, but a search folder will actually keep it. You may even find that if you had added it in the past, it might be showing up. I think that's why it's actually showing up over here. You can see the in folder, but if it didn't, I could add it in and it would stay there. So if I click away and come back, that in folder column will stay there next time you run the search. So that's kind of a nice way to get around that, since normally when you search, it kind of loses the column after the first time you use it. Speaking of columns and column headers, another way to find emails rather than searching is just simply using a column header. So it's usually defaulted to be sorted by the receive date, but you can always click on subject and sort by your subject or sort by from. You can click on the attachment to see which ones have attachments or which ones are marked as important. So you can do the different types of sorts depending on what you have, what you use, and what you like to see, just to bring those things up to the top for you. I'm going to go ahead and put this back to received. You can also do a search by right-clicking on top of an email, going to find related, and you could say messages in this conversation or messages from this sender. So if I say in this conversation, there's only one, it looks like, that has this subject heading. I'm going to go ahead and close that search up here and by Xing on the top right. Let's choose another one that's maybe got more than one. Find related messages in this conversation. So this is finding ones in other folders that happen to have the same subject line. And that was a right click to find related either by conversation or sender. The last way that I want to mention of how to filter or find on your emails is in the inbox. I have a filter email button up here where I can say just show me the unread, just show me the ones that have attachments, just show me the ones that were happened during a certain day. So this is another way to quickly filter your email and just see what you want to see. Lots and lots of ways to try and find those emails, because probably because we have to do it so often. So just wanted to mention a few tips there. Okay, a few little one-off tips that I wanted to share. So we're going to look at going to the new email. And when you send out messages to a large group of people, if you've ever had this happen to you where you send it out, a blast email to people on something, and then somebody decides that they need to comment or ask you a question, they'll hit reply to all, and then everybody in that email gets their question, even though they maybe just meant to ask you. And this can quickly fill up people's email boxes or their inboxes, and it can get a bit frustrating. To get around that, to make sure that doesn't happen, what you want to utilize is something called the BCC, or blind carbon copy. So to turn that on, in my new email message, I'm going to go to options, and then you'll see the BCC here, and that'll basically bump that line on. And basically once you turn it on, it's going to stay there. If you ever get to the point where you don't like seeing it down there, you just come back up here and turn it off. But when you're going to send an email out to a large group of people, the odd thing is what you're going to do is actually send it to yourself. So you put your own email address in a to line, and then you put all the other people in the BCC. And that way, by doing that, if they hit reply or reply to all, it'll go just back to the person in the to line, and the BCC won't get those extra ones. So that's how you can kind of save that people might hit reply to all on accident. Again, put your name in the to line, put the other people's names in the BCC line. Something else I wanted to mention is the out-of-office assistant, and we get to that by going to File, to Automatic Replies or Out of Office. Most people are familiar with this. They can turn on automatic office or automatic replies, type in a message, I'm going to be out until X date. If you need any questions, contact so-and-so. But you might not have noticed the fact that there is an automatic sending right below that option. So when you're getting ready to leave on vacation or a trip or something, usually the last thing on your mind as you're wrapping up for your last day is to come in here and turn this on. So it's easy to forget. Whereas if you come in here 2 days before, a month before, if you're really excited about your vacation, you can tick this box and say, I know I'm going to be out starting on this date, and I'm going to be coming back on this date and this time. Send that message only while I'm gone. And that way you can do it while you're thinking about it and then not have to worry about it on your last day as you're trying to tie up loose ends. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about has to do with conversations. And I realize now that I need to have a few more emails in here to work with that, because conversations are all about having similar subject lines. It's basically when you've gone back and forth on an email. And I don't think I actually have any in here right now, so let me just pull a couple more in. Okay, so when you turn on conversation view, it's going to look through all the subject lines and find any that are the same and group them together. So it's another way of grouping. And to do that, I go to the View tab and tick this box, say Show as Conversations. I can say whether I want it for this folder or all. I'm just going to say this folder. And it gives you this little triangle here. So now I can shrink up this conversation or I can expand it. And the nice thing about Conversation View is that it'll actually find things in other folders. So even though I'm in the inbox, it's showing me that there's another email in my sent items that has the same subject line. And it does save a bit of space because you can shrink things up and not have them all interspersed throughout your email. This is definitely a personal preference. It's whichever works for you. If you try it for a while and decide you don't want it, it's easy to turn off. You just go back to View and untick the Show as Conversations. The other thing around conversations that I wanted to mention is cleanup. So back on the Home tab here, you'll find a drop down for cleanup. And what cleanup is going to do is, again, going by conversations, meaning going by subjects that are the same, it's going to find redundant emails. So if I emailed someone and they replied and then I emailed them and get back and they replied and back and forth and back and forth, if you happen to have 6 or 7 emails and the most recent one has everything that was in all the others, you only need that one, and you can manually go through and delete the others, but cleanup will do that for you. So I'm going to go ahead and say clean up this folder, and then it says it's going to remove all the redundant messages in this current folder and move them to deleted items. I'm going to say that's fine, so I'm going to say clean up, and it got rid of those 2 extra testing 1, 2, 3. And it is only for redundant, so the system should keep anything that was unique. So if you had somebody that you were going back and forth, and then somebody did a forward or something, and there's something slightly different that isn't in your most recent email, it'll keep the most recent email and that unique one and get rid of all the rest. So if there's more than one that has unique information, it should keep both. It just cleans up all the ones that are truly redundant. And again, that was on the Home tab under drop down for cleanup. The next few things that we're going to talk about are ways to automate things that you do frequently. So if there's a task that you find yourself doing every other day, once a month, etc., there are various tools inside Outlook to help you with those repetitive tasks. And the first thing we're going to look at is Quick Steps. You'll find Quick Steps when you're in your inbox on the Home tab, right here in the middle. And Quick Steps, again, is meant to help you with things that you do more than once. Quick Steps comes with some things that are ready for you to use and other things that are waiting for you to finish them, or you can create your own new custom Quick Steps. So in this list, the one that's ready to use right away is Reply and Delete. Reply and Delete can be really helpful when you often get emails where you know the answer, you just want to send a quick response, and then you're done. To help keep your inbox less cluttered, instead of having an email, for example, this one that's got a quick question, I could hit reply, I could type out the email, and I could come back in here and delete it. Reply and delete will basically save you a step by doing both at once. So I click on the email, and instead of hitting the normal reply button, I'm going to choose reply and delete. I would type out my answer, and then hit send. And notice that the email's no longer in my inbox. So it allows me to do a reply, but then it just finishes up with a delete. Again, just to save you an extra step. One thing to keep in mind, though, for example, is it doesn't seem to care whether you actually do the reply or whether you just close it. So this one here that's at the top now that says RE, very important test email, if I use reply and delete and then I get busy with something else, I'm like, oh, I'll handle this later. If I close this without actually sending it, Outlook doesn't seem to recognize that as any different, and it will actually delete it. You can always go back to your deleted items folder and get that email back. but just something to keep in mind that if you're using reply and delete, you do want to actually use the send for reply, otherwise it's still going to delete it from your inbox. The rest of the ones in the quick steps box up here are waiting for you to finish them. So let's take a look at the to manager one up at the top here. And if I hover over it, it describes what the quick step is meant to do. So this one's saying it forwards the selected email to your manager. And you'll notice that the little icon next to it is the blue arrow, which is the same icon that's on the forward button. I can't actually use this yet. I do actually have to finish it. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to pop up and say first time setup. And at this point, I could name this something else. Maybe I'm not looking to forward things to my manager. Maybe it's more to a coworker. So I'm going to say I'm going to actually call this FWD for forward Jill. And then it's already got an action in it for forwarding, and I need to choose who's it going to. One thing I want to mention on this, it's a little quirky. If I come in here to choose the to and pick my person, for some reason then if you decide that you want to work on the options within the quick step, once you click options, it blanks that out. I'm not sure why. So just want to hit options first before to, or if it blanks it out, just go back in there and pick the person again. And I'm picking one person. You could definitely do more than one. We'll take a look at that also in just a few minutes here. At this point, I could go into show options, and I could add to the subject line. I could add some text. I'm going to go ahead and say so my goal here is that I constantly get emails related to a project, and sometimes they forget to include Jill. So I am often forwarding the email to her just to keep her in the loop. This way, I'll have a quick step to help me with that, so I won't have to hit forward, type out here, this is about the project and all that. This is going to take care of it for me. Before I click OK and finish this up, there's obviously a lot of options in here. We're going to keep it pretty simple. But I did want to mention that if you start looking around in here and you happen to notice this automatically send after 1 minute delay, that could be really tempting to go ahead and tick it, but I don't recommend it. It doesn't actually seem to wait a minute. And sooner or later, you're going to end up clicking on this button up top when you don't really mean to, or when you want to make some changes or something, and you'll end up sending an email that you didn't mean to if you have this ticked. So I do like to leave that option unticked, because then it gives you a little bit more time to decide, oh, is this really what I was meaning to do? So just in case you happen to notice that while you're playing around with these. All right, I'm going to hit save, and you'll notice that that changed the quick step that I chose to do the setup on to forward Jill. And let's say then that I got this email about the project or whatever, and I want to send that to Jill. Let's just pick one that's got some text in it here. So if I've chosen the email, I come up to my quick steps and hit forward Jill. It turns that email into a forward, and it types in the text that I put into that options area, puts her name in the to line. All I have to do is hit send. So it just saves you those extra steps. This is also why, though, every once in a while I hit this and go, oh, I didn't actually mean to do that on this email. I had the wrong email selected. Because I didn't choose that automatically send, I could say, you know what, I don't want this after all, and close it, and it won't send. But that button will stay up there, so a week from now, if I need to do the same thing, I still got that option. Some of the other ones that are up here that are waiting for you to finish them, this one is basically going to move any selected email to a certain folder, so it's going to choose one of the folders kind of randomly, but you could change that and do something else. This is going to mark something as done. The team email is one that I wanted to mention. So I'm going to go ahead and click on team email. And again, it's doing the first time setup. You could name this whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and leave it as team email. I'm going to hit options, so I get more of my options. And the action that this one's doing is new message. And so perhaps you have to send an email once a week, once a month to the same people over and over. I have to do this actually every week for something where I kind of need to update people on the latest information. And so I've actually got this quick step on my computer, and I use it every single week. So to do this, I'm going to choose the people I want the email to go to. So we'll pick a couple people here. Once you've got your people down in the to line, you can say OK. I click on Show Options, and so I could put in whatever I want for subject, text, or if I wanted to leave those blank, that's fine. Again, lots of different options in here. I'm just going to keep it kind of simple. So I click Save, and I didn't change the name, so it still shows as team email. But this time when I click it, it's going to pop up with the people I had chosen to be in the to line. It puts in the subject line that I had, puts in some text, and then I could just finish it off each week with whatever I need to do and send it. So again, this is something you could do every week by hitting New Message, entering the people, entering the subject line, putting in the beginning text. But if it's something you do on a repeated basis, let the computer help you out by doing some of it for you. If you wanted to create your very own, so these don't quite do what it is you need to do, you can create your own by using the Create New and naming it whatever you want to. So I'm just going to name this Example, not feeling particularly creative. And then at this point, because this one's custom, you basically have to build it from scratch. So you need to choose an action. And there's a lot in here in this dropdown. Maybe you want to move something to a certain folder, or delete it, or mark it as read, or set it as a certain category. Maybe you want to do a reply or a new meeting. Lots of different options in here. I'm just going to pick a couple options to do. So for example, I'm going to choose something like mark as read. And so far we've looked at things that just have one action in them, but you can do more than one. So I'm going to say add action and choose, let's delete this message. So actually, why don't I call this what it's meant to do? So I try to keep them kind of short because there's not a lot of space up here. So if you have a long name, it'll kind of truncate it and you won't be able to see it anyway. So mark read and delete. And I click finish. Now I have a new quick step up the top here. All of mine are actually marked read already, so let's just pick one and mark it as unread. So every once in a while I'll get an email in that's just kind of, you know, it's a blast email or it's a spam or whatever, and I'm kind of picky that I don't like to have something go into my deleted items, because when I do that, for example, right now you can see the inbox is showing one unread, deleted items doesn't have any read, or unread, which kind of makes sense. And if I were to just delete this, it's now showing one unread item in my delete box, which just kind of drives me nuts for some reason. I'm just a little silly. So I like to have the option that, oh, I got this, I know it's not important, I'm just going to mark it read and delete it, and that way it marks it as read, moves it into the deleted item. So again, that's two steps that now I have one button to do. That's just one example. Basically, I would just say, now that you know about this, kind of pay attention to what you're doing, and if you kind of notice after a couple weeks, oh, that's something I do more than once, that's something I do pretty frequently, give it a try. Go ahead and choose a quick step and see if there's something that you could automate with that. As with everything, if we're going to do a quick step and learn how to create them, I do want to let you know how to remove them. So if I come here to the bottom right of the quick steps area, there's a drop down, and I can choose manage quick steps. And in the manage quick steps, one of the other nice things that's good about coming in here is if you don't like the order this is showing up, you could choose any of your quick step and use the arrow buttons to move it up and down in the list. So if you'd like to reorder your quick steps, you can do that in here. If you need to change something, maybe the team email needs to go to somebody else, you need to add somebody to that quick step you already created, you could hit edit and go in and change your quick step. You could delete it, you could duplicate it if you have another quick step that's similar to this but just slightly different. So you have lots of options in here. You can also right click on top of a quick step, and then you'll get options to edit it or delete it also, or go straight into that manage quick steps. A powerful tool is just a matter of paying attention to what you might want to use it for. The next thing we're going to talk about, we talked about quick steps, now we're going to talk about quick parts. And quick parts is something that you use in new email messages. So I'm going to open up a new email. And what quick parts is meant to do is if you have text that you use over and over again, quick parts can save that text for the next time you need to use it. So I'm just going to type out some text here. And obviously I could format this, I can have paragraphs of text, but I'm just going to keep it nice and short. So once you have the text that you use a lot, and if you already have it typed out in an email, go ahead and copy and paste it into here. You're going to select the text, go to Insert, over here to Quick Parts, and then say Save Selection to Quick Part Gallery. It's going to pop up, and the name of it's going to be the beginning of your sentence, the beginning of whatever text you have. I would recommend leaving this alone, and I'll explain why in just a minute. It should be saving in the normal email.dotm. If not, you're going to want to select that, but that should all just be default, so really you just need to say OK. At this point then, if I were to go ahead and close this now, I'll need to save it. A week from now, if I'm creating a new email message, what I can do is start typing that sentence. And as soon as I start typing it, it recognizes that I have a quick part that's saved with that same beginning text. So you can see it up here that it's recognizing that, and as it's instructing in this little box, if I just hit enter, it'll finish it for me. And that's the reason why I said to leave the name as the beginning, because that way as you start to type the beginning of your sentence, it'll recognize it. If you didn't want to, you could give it a name. It's just whatever name that you gave it, you'd want to start typing that to have it auto-recognize and let you use that enter to finish. For some reason, if it's not popping up with the option to hit enter to finish, you can always go to your Insert, Quick Parts, and you'll find whatever ones you've built here. You can definitely have more than one. Anytime you want to insert it this way, you would just choose it from the list and it would insert that for you. If you find that you do use the drop-down for the quick parts instead of typing and using the enter to finish, I would recommend, of course, right-clicking on it and adding it to the quick access toolbar. That way, you don't have to go to the Insert tab. You can just click up here and have whatever it is you'd like to use. If you'd like to get rid of a quick part, you're no longer using it, you could go to Insert, Quick Parts, and when you right-click on top, you're going to get an option for Organize and Delete. If I click that, you might see quite a few things show up in here depending on your version of Outlook, because it has some standard built-in things. You would just find the one that you've built and choose Delete if you want to get rid of that. And close. And that's how to create and then later remove, if you no longer need it, quick parts. Now, often when I show quick parts to people, one of the first questions they ask me is, oh, that's great, I need to send out an email on a regular basis, and I have attachments in it. Can I do that? Unfortunately, quick parts, there are some workarounds that sometimes work with that for attachments, but not really very cleanly. Also, quick steps, the ones that are up here at the top, definitely don't allow you to put attachments in. And there is another way to do that, though, and that's what I'm going to talk about next, which is email templates. So using an email template will allow you to send out one or more attachments on a regular basis. So that's a great way to automate emails that you send that include attachments. So to create an email template, we're going to create a new email message. And we basically build the email that we want to use over and over. So I'm just going to put in some subject and text here. One thing to keep in mind is if you have your signature in Outlook set to automatically add, you're going to want to take that out for your template. Because when you use the template, the signature will be added back in. So if you don't take it out here, you're going to end up with the signature showing up twice. So I'm just going to leave the signature off there. I put in whatever text I have here. Most likely you'd have more than just this simple bit. A little bit of subject line also. And then I'll go ahead and add my attachments. I'm just going to attach one thing, but of course you could have more than one attachment if you wanted to. Something to keep in mind, though, is that when you create the email template, it is making a copy of your document. So once I make this email template, a week from now, if I go into that Word document on my folder on the network and make a change to it, this email template is not going to get the changes. So you'd need to delete this email template and recreate it with a new attachment. So just keep in mind that they're not linked. This is a copy of your attachment as it is today. Okay, now that I've got the subject line, the text, and the attachment, I'm going to save this as an email template. To do that, I go to the File, Save As, And down here at the bottom where it says Save as Type, I'm going to change that to the Outlook template, and then it takes me to where it saves templates. I'm going to leave the file name the way it is. That looks good to me. Click on Save. And then at this point, you're done creating the template. You can go ahead and close it, and no need to save it. Now, if it's a week later, a day later, I need to send that out to somebody, I can simply click on New Items, come down to More Items, and choose Form. In here, it's going to default to Standard Forms Library. Just change that to User Templates, and there's my email template. So I can double click to open that, or click and open, and there's my template. I would just put in the 2-line. If I need to change some text, I can, but it's all set and ready to go. Noticed it did put my signature line in, so that's why we took it out before, so we just have one signature. I'm going to go ahead and close this. No need to send her or save it, but that template is now there for you to use. And as I'm sure you can guess, this is something that if you use it quite often, you're going to want to add that to your quick access toolbar. I actually have already added it up here, so let me just get rid of it real quick. So to add that to your quick access toolbar, you would go through the same steps as if you're going to use it, which is New Items, More Items, and then instead of clicking on Choose Form, you would right click on top of it and say Add to Quick Access Toolbar. Now I have the button up here that will take me into Choose Form. I do still need to change this to User Templates, but then there's my email template. So again, if you're going to use it quite often, I would recommend coming in here, right-clicking, and adding it to your quick access toolbar, but then it's right there for you to use whenever you need it. And of course, you can have more than one email template. If there's different things you send, you can create multiple ones. There's another place that you can actually add this as a shortcut. To do that, I need to actually go back in it to where the email template saves. So one easy way to do that is go to New Email, File, Save As, change that type again to Outlook Template. So now I can see my email templates up here. I'm going to click on the one that I just created and drag down to the icon for Outlook on the taskbar, and then I let go. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here now. There's no need to save or send this. But now my Outlook icon here, if I right click on it, up at the top is that email template pinned. And so we talked about how you can right click and create a new email or a new meeting using that right click shortcut, but you can also pin your templates up here. So if I right click on that and then choose the email template, it pops open for me. It's really up to you whether you'd like to do the quick access toolbar up here and or adding it to the right click down here. It's just whatever works for you. If at some point you need to get rid of an email template, maybe you did have an update to the attachment, so you want to delete the old one and create a new one with a new attachment, or if you just don't use it that often anymore, you go back in as if you're saving it. So create a new email message, go to File, Save As, change this to Outlook Template. Now that you can see your email templates here, you'd simply click on it and then hit the delete key on your keyboard, and that'll get rid of the template. I can go ahead and cancel out of this box, close the message, no need to save it, and now I've removed that template from the system. To get rid of it from your right click, you'll notice that there's a little icon here off to the right for a pin with a no sign next to it, so I could unpin that so that it doesn't try to find a template that no longer exists. Now we're going to take a look at rules. And rules, again, are another way to automate things that need to be done on a frequent basis. In your inbox on the Home tab, if you come over here to about the middle, a little bit to the right, there's a drop down for rules. And I'm going to choose on the Create Rule. It does have some that are kind of built in that you could turn on, and it's going to pull some of that information from whatever email you happen to have selected at the time. I'm actually going to create a custom rule. So to do that, I'm going to go to Advanced Options, and then you build your rule. And basically, Outlook's asking, okay, whenever I get an email that does something, what do you want me to do with it? So the first thing you need to do is select the conditions. So do you want emails that come from a certain person, like from Braddy KA Test? Again, that's happened to be pulled from because the email I have selected came from that person. Or maybe it has a certain subject line, or it was sent to a certain person, or sent just to me. those types of things. Maybe I'm going to go ahead and choose where my name is in the CC box. So let's say, okay, that's what I'm looking for. Now you'll notice that some of these things have blue underlines. If you have something like that, when you add that criteria, it's going to want you to basically tell it a little bit more. The CC one, it knows exactly what that means. But if I also chose to add another criteria, which I could do, that says it has specific words in the body, if I try to click next, it's going to say, wait a minute, something's missing, because it doesn't know which words I'm looking for. So once I add a criteria down here that's got a blue underline, I need to click that and specify. So maybe I only want to look at emails where I'm on the CC line that have certain words. I would put that in here. I'm actually going to take that one off just to keep things simple and just leave it with the CC. So the next step is, okay, Outlook knows which email messages to find, but then what do you want Outlook to do with them? Do you want them to delete it? Do you want them to put it into a certain folder? Do you want it marked as important? What are the different things you want to have done? And again, you can choose more than one option here. So I'm going to say that every time I get an email where I'm in a CC line, then I'm going to move it to a certain folder. So that's the very top option there. And again, you'll notice that it has an underlined area, so I do need to pick that. So I'm going to expand the inbox here, and I'm going to choose the CC'd email folder and say OK. So now that I've told it what I want it to do with the email, then I hit next. And this last one is optional, but you can have exceptions. So maybe I only want it to do that pretty much all the time, but if this exception is met, then don't do it. So maybe I could say if it's from a certain person, then ignore it. Maybe it's from my manager, I don't want to move it, I want it to stay in the inbox, that kind of thing. I'm going to leave the exceptions blank and just hit next. And then I need to give the rule a name, so something that helps me remember what it does. And I could hit finish at this point, but I'm actually going to tick this box that says run the rule now on messages already in the inbox. So you'll notice I have one here that's example of a CC email and another CC for class. So I'm going to tick that, and you'll notice that when I finish this, those emails disappear because they followed the rule and got moved into this folder. So that's one example of, from now on, anytime an email comes into my inbox where I am CC'd, it would not be in my inbox, it would go to that CC'd emails folder. And this is one thing I've read on various efficiency websites or productivity websites, that in order to kind of reduce the clutter in your inbox, quite often when you're CC'd on an email, it's not usually as urgent as when it's sent directly to you. So you could set up Outlook to automatically filter those into a folder, which of course you'll still want to go read those. Maybe you set up, at the end of the day for half an hour, you always go in and look those over and address them. But it's not, constantly inundating your inbox with new email messages that maybe aren't quite as high priority. That's just a tip I read on the web. It may not be applicable to you, but there's various other rules that maybe you get some emails about, maybe got put onto a mailing list or something, and for some reason you're having a hard time getting off the mailing list. You could set up a rule to say, every time I get this email, mark it as read and move it to deleted. And it's, if it's from a certain email address or it has a certain subject line in it, I just know that I just want to delete it. So there's various things that you can do with rules. Every time this happens, take this action against it. And again, we did that by going to rules to create rule. And you can also go into the manage rules and alerts to see the rules that you've already created. If you want to get rid of one because you don't really want it to keep going, you would come in here, choose the rule, and hit the delete button. The last thing I'm going to talk about is conditional formatting. And this helps certain emails in your folder or your inbox jump out. So if you want to highlight certain emails and make them easier to notice, conditional formatting can help you with that. Unlike the quick steps and the rules, this isn't something that an action's being taken, like sending an email or moving an email to a folder. It's more of a visual thing. So because of that, it's under the View tab. So I'm going to go to the View tab, and then I go to View Settings over here on the left. Inside View Settings, you'll find conditional formatting. There's already some that are built in. Unread messages are bold. certain things are marked different ways that are built by the program. You want to just leave that in there. But we're going to add a new one. So let's click on the Add button. Down here now it wants me to give it a name, so I'm going to call this one Jill. And then the font will let you choose, okay, how do you want that email to look different from the rest? So I'm going to click on Font, and let's say that I want ones from Jill to be colored, let's go with aqua. That's going to be a little hard to read. Let's go with red. Okay, and I could do bold, or I could do a different font if I wanted, or larger, or whatever, but I'm just going to keep it kind of simple here. Say OK. The condition then is, okay, which emails do you want to have this different formatting? So I'm going to click on the From and choose my person and say OK. There's obviously a ton of different things in here you could set. You could say I want certain emails that have these words in them, or where I am the only person in the to line or whatever, have those jump out at you. I'm just going to leave it with all the ones that are from Jill. And I click OK, OK, and OK again. And notice that the ones from Jill now are showing up as bold and red. And at this point, if I wanted that to be true for all my folders, not just the inbox, again, I could choose that Change View, Apply Current View to Other Mail folders. And you can have multiple conditional formatting, so maybe you have one person set to show up as red, somebody else has blue text, different things you can do that when you're looking through your emails, if you want certain ones to be very apparent to you, or when a new one comes in, you want to really notice that one compared to everything else in your inbox. That's what conditional formatting can do for you. Obviously, whenever I show you how to turn something on, I do show you how to turn it off. So if you no longer want that to be true, you go back to View Settings, Conditional Formatting, choose the one you created, and then you can choose Delete. And that's it for these tips and tricks. Thank you very much.